Hello friends, now start with the last topic of bond valuation, that is immunization of bond. So, in this particular topic what we are going to cover? We are basically focusing on the background of immunization, then what is bond immunization means, then key concepts related to this particular concept, then example. I am going to elaborate with the help of an example how the immunization strategy works and benefits and limitation. So, when we talk about the bond immunization, but before starting with that we need to understand two important concepts, that is price risk and reinvestment risk. So, bond interest rates tend to change over time. It may lead to exposure to interest rate risk to the bond holders. So, and this interest rate risk comprises of two components, that is price risk and reinvestment risk. What is price risk? It stems from the inverse relationship between bond prices and the required rate of return. So, what is the bond price and what is the rate of return? On the basis of that, the price risk arises. Then reinvestment risk arises from the rate at which the interest income can be reinvested in the future. So, whatever income we are generating, on the basis of that, if I able to reinvest it at a higher rate, then we are talking about better situation, but if the interest rate is lesser at that point of time, then in reinvestment risk arises. So, the price risk and reinvestment risk move in opposite direction. So, if these two components are better in the condition, then there is less interest risk, but if this situation are worse, in that situation interest rate risk arises. Now, on the basis of this we talk about the immunization. So, if interest rate risk goes up, in two consequences for the bondholder. What are these two consequences? The bond price falls, first thing, and the return on reinvestment of income improves. So, first thing, because there is a inverse relationship between price risk and reinvestment risk. So, if the interest rate goes up, what will happen? The price of the bond falls and the reinvestment instrument improves. By the same token, if the interest rate declines, what will happen? There are again two conditions, the price of the bond rises and the reinvest income decreases. So, these two conditions should be taken into consideration by the bondholder or the investor who are interested in investing in bonds before investment, so that they can take care of these two types of risk, price risk and the reinvestment risk. So, in the price risk, if the interest rate goes up, the price of the bond falls and it causes a price risk, and if the return on reinvestment will improve. And if the interest rate declines, what will happen? The price of the bond improves and it will result in decrease in the reinvestment in risk. So, can a bondholder ensure that these two opposite effects can be equal, so that he is immunized against the interest rate risk? Yes, it is possible. How it is possible? He have to choose bonds whose duration is equal to his investment horizon. With the help of this immunization policy or the immunization strategy, a bondholder can mitigate this situation and minimize the interest rate risk. So, what is bond immunization? Bond immunization is a strategy used by the bond investor to shield a bond portfolio from the interest rate risk. So, we have gone through two types of interest rate risk, one is price risk, another one is reinvestment risk. On the basis of this risk, interest rate risk arises. If this need to be minimized, the bondholders has to follow the immunization strategy. So, the main goal of immunization is to ensure that investors' portfolio will provide a known return over a specified time horizon, regardless of fluctuations in interest rate. If I am getting a fixed rate of return, in that situation I am immunized, but if it is continuously floating, in that situation it becomes difficult for the bondholder to mitigate this particular risk. This is particularly useful for investors with fixed future liabilities, such as pension funds or insurance companies that need to meet specific payment obligation in the future. Why? Pension fund holders, in case of companies who are having the pension funds or they are managing the pension funds, as well as the insurance companies, they have to fixed amount at the time of maturity. In that situation, they required a return which is quite fixed, so that they are immunized against the interest rate risk. Otherwise, what will happen if the interest rate continuously fluctuates and the risk is there in the market, they will not able to pay the guaranteed return to their investors. So, what are the basic key concepts under the bond immunization? First one is interest rate risk, which we already elaborated, but let us focus on it again. Bonds are sensitive to changes in the interest rate. We already know if it is a floating bond, it is confined to this particular interest rate fluctuations. When interest rate rises, bond prices falls, and when interest rate fall, bond prices rises. So, interest rate risk rises from these fluctuations which are negatively impact the value of the bond portfolio. Whoever is holding a bond portfolio, whether it is a fund manager who is managing the insurance company's funds or a pension fund in that situation also, or if he is a bond holder, they also face this type of risk. So, interest rate falls, suppose interest rate decreases, bond prices increases, and if interest rate increases, bond prices decreases. So, this is the relationship, there is an inverse relationship between these two. Duration is another important aspect, because durations affects the sensitivity to changes in the interest rate. With the longer period, the sensitivity is higher, in shorter period the sensitivity is low. So, it estimates how much price the bond will change for a given change in the interest rate. In bond immunization, duration plays a central role because it helps to manage the interest rate risk. Now, what is the immunization strategy? The basic idea of immunization is to match the duration of bond portfolio to the investor's investment horizon. That means, the period for which the investment is planned, it should be matched accordingly. When duration is matched with the time horizon, the impact of interest rate changes on the bond prices and the impact on reinvestment of coupon payments offset each other. How they are going to offset? Because I know for how much period I want to hold the bond and at what period of time I want to reinvest. So, if my time horizon and the duration is matched together, then on the basis of that I can get immunization of interest rate risk. So, this creates a situation when portfolio is immunized against interest rate fluctuation. When the bond price and the impact of reinvestment coupon payments offset each other, at that situation I am in a position where I am immunized against the interest rate fluctuation. Now, this is the example. Suppose an investors need to pay a liability in 5 years. Okay? To immunize their portfolio, they would invest in a set of bonds whose average duration is again 5 years. So, he has to pay suppose a loan after a period of 5 years. The maturity period of the loan is 5 years. And what he has done? He has invested certain amount of money in bond. Now, how is going to mitigate the situation? If interest rate rise or fall during the period, the changes in the value of bond will be offset by the changes in reinvestment rate of the coupons, allowing the investor to meet their liability. So, whatever coupons or whatever the interest he is getting annually, that is again reinvested according to the market situation for this 5 years. So, what he is doing? He has a liability, suppose 1 lakh rupees to be paid after 5 years. Whatever amount he has invested in bond, he is getting a coupon on that. Coupon means the amount of interest he is getting, and he is again reinvesting this interest. So, he is mitigating the situation. How is mitigating? He is reinvesting and the amount is clubbed together, and whatever the difference in the amount of interest, it is mitigated by this reinvestment, and this reinvestment is going to give him the benefit at the time when the particular bond gets matured. He can easily repay the amount with the help of this coupon as well as the principal amount and pay back this 1 lakh rupees without any hassles. Now, what are the types of immunization? First one is classical immunization. This involves holding a portfolio of bonds with a duration that matches the time horizon of the investor's future liability. So, what I have to do, if I have taken a 5 years loan, I have to purchase a 5 years bond, and on the basis of that I can mitigate the situation. So, this is a classical condition. Then contingent immunization, a more flexible approach that combines the active management with immunization. If a portfolio performs well and exceeds the required return, the investor may take on more active management. If the portfolio underperforms, it is switched back to the stricter immunization strategy. So, in this case there are two strategies are followed. One is active, another one is active but along with immunization. What the investor is doing, if the market is giving better returns to the investor, he can reinvest easily. But if the market is not performing well, in that situation, he may move to the more stricter immunization, where he has to reinvest the coupons, and whatever the interest he is getting, he is actually mitigating the risky situation out of it. So, these are the typical types of immunization that are available to a particular bond holder. Now, coming to how the immunization strategy works in real life. So, first thing that an investor has to do, he has to match the duration, that is the classical immunization strategy. He has to match the duration. Second, protection against the interest rate changes. How he is going to do? By reinvesting. Third is following the passive strategy, and fourth is rebalancing. The first is duration matching. Here the purpose of duration matching is to choose bonds with an average duration that matches with the investor's time horizon, which helps to offset the impact of interest rate changes on the bond. So, what he is going to do, if he is to pay the liability after 5 years, he have to choose accordingly, and he have to pay the liability after 10 years, he is going to choose a bond of 10 years. So, duration matching will be done, and this duration matching is going to mitigate the interest rate changes. Then protection against interest rate changes. With the help of immunization, he can stop the losses against rising rate by balancing market value and decreases with higher reinvestment returns. And what he has to do? He has to reinvest at higher returns or higher interest rate, so that he can rebalance the situation or mitigate the situation. If interest rate is falling at point of time, whatever the coupon he is getting, he need to reinvest at that point of time where he is getting the higher interest rate. Passive strategy requires minimal adjustments once the correct duration is set. If this 5 years matching or 10 years, 6 years matching has been done correctly, in that situation the investor can have a passive strategy, otherwise he requires a active strategy like conditional immunization. Then rebalancing. Rebalancing may be necessary over time to adjust for changes in the durations caused by time passing and interest rate fluctuations, ensuring that strategy's effectiveness is maintained. So, whenever it is required, we need to adjust our situation, which may affect the interest rate for a certain time or interest income for a certain period of time, but as the rates changes or it increases, our situation is rebalanced. Now, what are the benefits and limitations? So, first benefit of immunization is protection against interest rate changes. So, immunized portfolios are largely protected from fluctuation in interest rate. So, the basic concept of immunization is that we should be protected against interest rate fluctuation, and with the help of immunization we can mitigate this situation. So, if you want to have a proper bond investment, in that situation what you have to do, and along with bond investment, if you have certain liabilities that need to be paid in future, in that situation you have to accept this immunization strategy and adopt it properly. Second is predictable returns. With the help of a bond immunization, there is a degree of certainty, and that degree of certainty is quite high as compared if we are not following the bond immunization, that we can meet the desired future liability easily at the time. And otherwise what will happen, if the coupon coming in and going out, we are not reinvesting it, in that situation at the time of payment of that liability, we do not have enough funds to pay it, because we have to pay the interest also, along with that we have to pay the principal amount, and here the bond income is giving us the interest plus the principal amount. So, if we are reinvesting this bond, we are managing the situation and we are at a position of immunization. What are the limitation of bond immunization? First one is rebalancing cost. Frequent adjustments may be required to maintain the duration match, leading to higher transaction costs. Because if you want to rebalance the portfolio, as it is mentioned in previous slide also, that we need to rework on how we are going to do this immunization. One of the format is rebalancing the portfolio. So, continuously you have to rebalance, you have to be an active investor if you have future liabilities, and you have to mitigate the interest rate risk. In that situation, it may have higher transaction cost. Then market conditions, while immunization work well under stable market condition, if the market is volatile or the market situation is not good or economic condition is not good, in that situation immunization policy will not give us good returns, or that will not be fruitful for the bond holders. So, we have to check that situation also, whether economic condition is stable or unstable. So, while the immunization works well under stable market condition, large or unexpected changes in interest rate may still pose certain amount of risk. So, with the help of this concept, we are able to understand that immunization is very much important for the investors who are thinking of mitigating the interest rate risk. The interest risk comprises of two components, that is price risk and reinvestment risk, and if the investor has certain future liabilities to be paid, then in that condition they should go for immunization. So, we have completed the concept of limitations and benefits. Now, go to the example where we are going to explain this concept broadly. So, in this particular example, we are talking about a pension fund organization which has a liability of $10 million, and it has to pay it exactly within a period of 5 years. So, let us discuss this concept. So, imagine a pension fund that needs to pay 10 million liability in exactly 5 years to its retirees. The fund wants to ensure that it can meet this obligation regardless of how interest rates change over the next 5 years. So, when we are talking about how interest rate changes, that means interest rate risk is need to be considered. So, this particular thing is included in this particular concept. To achieve this, the fund employs a bond immunization strategy. So, what is the bond immunization strategy? We have discussed it earlier. Now, what are the steps that will be followed by the pension fund company to pay a $10 million liability to its retirees? The first, setting up of a portfolio. The fund managers decide to construct a bond portfolio. This should match the duration of time period, that is 5 years. This means the bond selected should have an average duration of 5 years, making the portfolio largely immune to interest rate changes. Now, what it has done? It has selected 3 bonds, bond A, bond B, bond C. Bond A is of 3 years government bond with 2% coupon rate, bond B 5 years corporate bond with 4% coupon rate, and bond C is 7-year municipal bond with 3% coupon rate. So, the average combination of these 3 bonds is going to give a average benefit at the time of maturity, that is average period of all these 3 if included, it is coming around 5 years. So, mixing of these bonds, the fund managers adjust the proportion to ensure the weighted average duration of portfolio, that is 5 years, aligning with the investment horizon. Because they have to pay this liability after 5 years, they have selected this particular bonds which is covering that particular issue. Now, second step is immunization. How it can be done? First scenario, when interest rate rises. So, we have already know that if the interest rate increase, the price of the portfolio will fall, reducing the market value of the portfolio. Okay. So, what will happen next? but the reinvestment risk is there, but this case there is no reinvestment risk because the interest rate is high and bond prices are falling, because we have this particular category of 3 bonds or the portfolio of bonds which is not aligning with the market condition, but whatever coupons we are generating, we are reinvesting it at a higher rate. So, overall portfolio will be managed with the help of this immunization process. So, however, the interest reinvestment rate of coupon payments will also increase, allowing the firm to reinvest these payments at a higher yields. So, we are getting higher yields by investing the or reinvesting the coupon payments. So, the decline in bond prices is offset by higher returns from reinvested coupon payments, ensuring that total portfolio value still aligns with the 5-year obligation of $10 million. This is the first scenario. If this happens, what will be the condition of the bond portfolio? Now, second condition is interest rate falls. If the interest rate falls, what will happen? The bond prices will automatically increase. If interest rate decreases, the price of the bond will increase, rising the portfolio's market value. However, reinvestment rate of the coupon payments will fall, but this again will offset by the rising prices of the bond. So, in this case, the increase in bond prices offsets the lower returns from the reinvested coupon, keeping the portfolio aligned with $10 million target. So, these are two situations. With the help of this, the immunization process is going into action. So, either in market situation during the period of 5 years, we have fall in interest rate and we have rise in interest rate. If the proper portfolio is maintained by the fund manager, he can manage this situation easily. Now, third step, what he is going to do is rebalancing. Over the period, the portfolio need periodic rebalancing to maintain its 5-year duration as the bond get closer to maturity. We have seen that there are 3 bonds ABC, one is a maturity period 3 years, one is 5 years and another one is 7 years. So, for example, if after a year bond A, that is a 3-year bond, will have only 2 years remaining, which reduces the overall portfolio duration. So, what it is going to do? To keep the duration at 5 years, the fund manager replace the bond A with a new 5-year bond or adjust the proportion of B and C bond. So, there are two options, either he replace the bond A, because we have bond A, bond B and bond C. So, bond A is of 3 years, this is of 5 year and this is of 7 year. So, if after 1 year, if the bond A is left with only 2 years, so what will happen? The fund manager can remove this particular bond or add a particular bond D into it, or he can rebalance this particular B and C bond. With the help of this particular procedure, they can maintain their investment horizon. So, what are the implications of this particular concept, or we can say what are the implications the fund manager will face if he follows the bond immunization. So, first it help in minimize interest risk. We have already gone through this concept earlier. The core implication of bond immunization is the ability to protect the bond from adverse effect of interest rate, that is rise of interest rates or fall of interest rates. By matching the bond portfolio's duration to investors' time horizon, the impact of rising and falling can be minimized. With the help of this example, we have explained it in a proper manner how the fund manager can immunize this particular concept of interest rate risk. Now, second one is predictable return. Bond immunization provides a predictable and relatively stable return, ensuring the portfolio will generate cash flow needed to meet the specific future liability. This also we have seen through the rebalancing procedure that in case the bond A is not effective after 1 year, they are rebalancing with B or C, or they are introducing another particular bond in it, and they are trying to manage the portfolio balance. Another thing in this particular concept is interest rate risk. If interest rate risk increases, what happens we have gone through, and if interest rate decreases, what is going to happen to the portfolio, we have seen in that particular example. So, with this they are able to pay the returns easily. Then third is reduced need for active management. Since immunization is largely a passive strategy, it minimizes the need for continuous active management. Once the bond portfolio is set up with the correct duration, it requires fewer adjustment like rebalancing what we have done. The passive nature of strategy often leads to lower transaction costs since trading is not needed for periodic rebalancing. After 1 year or after 2 years, the bond manager can or the fund manager can rebalance this particular situation, but it is not required that he should actively involved in this rebalancing concept and try to rebalance it within every 6 months or every 5 months. But after a period of time, he need to look into the bond portfolio, and if it is required that they have to change the content of the bond portfolio, then they are going to change it. The next one is rebalancing requirement. We have already explained this particular concept with the help of the example. Although bond immunization is primarily passive, maintaining it requires a rebalancing, and which requires we should have an active involvement. Although we are passive in dealing with the immunization, but we should actively check the investment and the portfolio and where it is moving. And interest rate and bond price fluctuation, the duration of individual bonds and overall portfolio can change, requiring adjustment to ensure the duration remain aligned with the investment horizon. Next implication is inflation and market conditions. Bond immunization does not inherently protect against inflation risks. If inflation arises unexpectedly, real returns may be lower than the anticipated, so which can erode the purchasing power. Immunization assumes that bonds are sold and reinvested without substantial market impact. So, in case of illiquidity in the market, it becomes difficult for the bond manager or the fund manager to maintain this situation. And simply because inflation is affecting the bonds negatively, it is going to have a less liquidity in the market. Limited return potential. By prioritizing safety and interest risk protection, the bond immunization often comes with expense of higher potential returns. We have gone through the example, and we have seen in both the situation when interest rates are increasing or decreasing, in both the situation we are able to manage our position effectively. So, investors seeking maximize yield or outperform benchmarks may find immunization less appealing. If interest rate declines significantly, bond prices typically rises, offering potential capital gains. An immunized portfolio, however, might not capture these gains fully because it is going to rebalance it again, or we can say that it is going to adjust it in the portfolio. But in case we are effectively involved in bond trading, in that situation we can get the benefit of return or increase in the market prices of bond, because at that condition we will get higher returns from the market. But when we have this particular immunization along with the portfolio of or combination of some securities or bonds, in that situation it becomes difficult to have a better return, because the return is going to be averaged out at that situation. And last, simplified risk management. By matching the bond portfolio's duration with the liability horizon, investor can significantly reduce their risk exposure. So, with the help of this immunization concept, the fund managers who are handling bonds or who are handling pensions or insurance companies funds, they can go for this particular concept. But individual investor, if he has certain liabilities to pay in near future, in that condition they can opt for immunization. Otherwise, they can normally trade the bonds in the market and get the benefit out of it. With this, we come to end of this particular concept. Thank you.